27th of August, Rabbi Furst, Parsha Hashavua, Hisabo. Yeah, but I couldn't hear my ear. That's a great loss.
True, true.
Jim's gonna win. He'll show you. Maybe he doesn't want to ruin the whole day because people have.
Morning, Rabbi.
Show for him.
So, Rabbi, I have a question for you.
When you unmute yourself, Rabbi, you're muted.
Uh-oh. Instead of unmuting himself, he disconnected himself.
Hmm.
Okay, here he comes.
Oh, good morning again. Sorry I had to check out. For some reason, I get this reading that my speakers are not working, and it's true. They don't work for some reason. I don't know why. Now they're working. So just
Hashem.
chalk it up to digital anomalies.
Well, I have a question on
Okay.
this week's Parsha.
Oh, all right. Let's try to follow your question. Go ahead, Lou. Let me hear.
It says that you're you have to give your Meiser Ani the Levite convert, to the orphan, and to the widow. My question is, why is the convert included in there? Why should we assume a convert is an Ani?
Well, again, you're right. I mean, if he doesn't happen to be an ani, right, then there's no mitzvah of helping. He doesn't need your help. But we might think that since he's not part of our well, let's say put it this way, since he wasn't originally part of our people, right? You don't have such an obligation to support him. But the answer is no, that he now is part of our people, and if he's needy, we have an obligation to help him just like everybody else. Sometimes it may even be even more of an obligation to help.
I see.
But we see that the Torah goes out of its way many times to direct us that we should go out of our way to make the ger not just comfortable, but also to have him be especially cared for, because the ger, you have to remember, the ger doesn't have anyone to support him. He has no family infrastructure. He has left everything behind. It was like the classic case of Rus. Right, Rus. Naomi constantly at the very beginning was cautioning her and actually advising her not to come with her. Right. It was only after Ruth continued and greater insistence that she wanted to follow Naomi back there to Israel, that Naomi finally acquiesced and allowed her to come back with her to Eretz Israel. But really, it's not in the best interest of a non-Jew to become a ger, because they're burning all their bridges behind. Right? They're
Good
cutting
point. Good
they're
example,
cutting.
because she was a princess.
Yeah, that's right. She had everything that she could possibly want, but she understood the truth, and so she was interested in that for her life, and she was rewarded very greatly for it. But nevertheless, she and Naomi were very poor. She was out there picking the shikha leek with pay. She was going collecting like with the other poor people as well, because she had no. Especially in early times, a stranger was a stranger. Strangers were not really welcomed in communities, right? In our time, I mean, well, we have a Torah education and Torah philosophies, so we're taught that we have to help strangers because that's the whole point. They're strangers, and they don't have everything that the person who is a resident has. So lacking all those ways and means of support and the infrastructure of a family and friends and associates. So they're all by themselves. So it's a special mitzvah to help them out as much as we can, if necessary, if they need it. If for some reason they don't need it, then just like it's not such a mitzvah to help a person who's rich. So if they're rich and they don't need, so you help the people that need.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. Fine, very good. Okay, so this week's Parsha. I think it's very worthwhile. At the very beginning of the Parsha, right, we see that we have the mitzvah of the Bikurim, right, and then the statement that was made when we make do the mitzvah of the Bikurim, that we bring the first fruits to Eretz that are grown in Eretz Israel of the Shivas meeting, like Rashi mentions, and we bring them to Yerushalayim, and we bring them and give them to the Kohen, and we make the statement there. That's in if you see there by Sheni in Perek Chavav. Let's start. Yes. Pasuk Daled. Perek Chavav. Pasuk Daled. V'lokach hakohen.
Okay, should I read?
Yeah, if you like to read, fine. So again, we're in the 26th chapter, in the 4th verse. Chavav Pasuk Daled.
V'lokach hakohen hatena miadecha v'hi nicho lifnei mizbach Hashem Elokecha. So, and the Kohen will take the basket from your hand, and he will place it before the altar of Hashem your God.
Right. And so you see that you see the significance. Meaning again, the Mishnayos described that they had actually embellished the mitzvah very much. That they brought the fruits in special baskets, and they put them on. They brought them there on the cows and embellished cows with jewelry and things like this. And it was like a whole parade, a whole procession coming to Yerushalayim, into the base of Mikdash of those who would bring their bikurim, their first fruits. And this was a demonstration of our Hakaras Hatov, our thankfulness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because when the fruits finally do come and they finally do ripen, then the first of those fruits should only reasonably logically be brought to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a demonstration of our recognition that all this is coming to us through HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Very important lesson. The Havdil, you see, you ever go into stores and you see like there's a dollar bill, or and here in Israel there's a shekel some kind of a shekel bill taped onto the wall or by the cash register. You ever see that in your lives?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So you ever wondered what that's all about?
It's the first dollar that they collected as a result of their business.
That's right. So why, what do you think? What's the significance of that?
They're proud that they started their business.
Ah, so that's the wrong idea. When we bring our first fruits, we bring our first fruits and demonstrate our thankfulness to Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? So it's not a demonstration of our pride; it's a demonstration of our gratitude.
Rabbi, if it's a dollar bill and they tape it to the wall on the correct side, it says, "In God we trust."
Oh, did you? That's a good point. Did you ever notice what side they tape it on? Did they?
No, I forget now.
But once it's taped to the wall, it's out of circulation.
That's true.
So that once you bring your bikurim to Hashem,
Right.
it's out of circulation for you too.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a good point. Yeah.
That's right. Mhm. So, so the first fruits, and literal, figuratively speaking, also the first fruits, meaning the first benefits of a person who got through his labors. You know, like a person, he thought of a business idea. He finally got the money together to open the business, to rent or to buy the property. He stocked the business with whatever business he's doing, and then finally opened it up, and he gets his first customer there, and he pops down his first dollar bill, right, to buy those bubble gums. He opens a candy store, and he comes in, he buys the handful of candies. The little boy comes and buys a handful of candies for Shabbos, and he gets his first dollar. Right? Gets his first dollar. So that first dollar represents a lot more than just that first sale. It represents all the efforts that he's been putting into getting that whole business ready to go. It could be years of planning and preparation, depending on what kind of a business and what kind of a situation he's in. So that represents that first dollar quite a lot. So similarly, right, when the Torah gives us a mitzvah that you go down to the field and you're inspecting your trees, your fruit trees, and you finally see them blossoming, and then you see them budding, and then finally after the budding, you finally see that they're actually coming out with some little fruits. So as Rashi describes, you take the gumi, you take the string, and you tie it around there, because that's the first one you saw. That was the first fruits that came for that season, and that's a demonstration from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he's favoring you, that the trees are able to grow and they're able to produce what they're supposed to produce. It's an amazing thing. You read, amongst others, but most prominently, Rabbi Yehuda Miller's at Konar Baruch. He says, he constantly mentions, it's an amazing thing that you plant an apple tree and the tree grows, and after several years it's able to grow fruit, and then you finally, after the 3-4 years of orla and derby, then you finally can get benefit from the tree, and it produces, lo and behold, after all that work, it produces apples, right? That is an amazing thing, that an apple tree produces apples, like, and an orange tree produces oranges. Right? It wasn't always that way. Remember what used to be when after the Chet of Adam Rishon, wasn't that way at all. It was something that was not normal. If you remember the Rashi, let me see if I can find it for you. 1 second. Let's see. Oh, that if you have a chumash with Bereshis there, Parshas Bereshis, we're going to be coming up to this. We're going to be Bez Hashem, Simchas Torah in almost a little bit more than a month now, right? not so far away. So we learn Parshas Bereshis. You have Bereshis there, in that's in Perek Hey,
What?
Perek Hey, the fifth
Hey.
chapter of Bereshis, right? Hey, the first chapter of the fifth chapter of Bereshis, and Pasuk 29.
Mhm.
So it said that's talking about. I'll read you the pasuk there. You can back up maybe to 28. V'yichi lemech shtayim u'shmoina shana u'mas shana v'yoled ben. And the life of Lemech was 82 and 282 years. He lived 280. He was at the time when he was 282 years. He wrote that Ben, he gave birth to a son.
I've got
Right.
180 here.
Excuse me?
I've got 182 years.
Mea Shana, right? 180 to 182. That's right. And you want to read the next pasuk, Roy? Go ahead. You have 29. V'yikra es Shemai.
Hello?
Yeah, would you like to read the next pasuk?
Who did you call?
You, if you want.
Oh, all right, sorry. Yeah, I
No
didn't. I couldn't hear properly. Right, this is oops, 6 Pasuk. What? Kuftes 29.
Yes.
Is it right? Vayikra es Shema Noach Lamo Ze Yenachamenu Memaasanu Umatsuvon Yodino Min Ha'adama Asher Ara Adashem. That translates to, and he called his name Noah. Oh, right. So Melech begot a son, and he called his name Noah, saying, "This one will bring us rest from our work and from the toil of our hands, from the ground which Hashem had cursed."
Right. So Rashi explains there. I don't know, do you have a Rashi there by you as well?
Yeah, but not translated as Russian, not translated in English. I can't sort of really see it properly.
Okay, I'll take it.
Small.
Unless, Mary, do you have a Rashi there with the translation as well?
No.
No, I don't.
Okay, so Rashi says as follows, right? Again, Lemech gave birth to was born to him a son, and his name was called Noach. Why was his name called Noach? Right? Ze Yichanamenu, that Rashi explains Yaniach Mimenu es Itzvon Yodenu, that with the birth of Noach came to an end the Itzvon, the distress Yodenu, the distress of our hands. What does it mean, the distress of our hands? What was so distressing to them? That Rashi explains, Ad shelo bo Noach lo hayelem limar chreisha. That before Noach came, they didn't have farming tools, plowing tools. That Noach was the inventor of the plow, and amongst other things, he invented other pruning utensils. He was an inventor. He changed the whole way of life that was in existence until he was born, since the time of the Chet of Adam Rishon. Noach invented them. Noach was the inventor of all the farming tools that we had up until now we have mechanized tools, but still in many more primitive settings, the very same tools that Noach invented are still in use. Picks, shovels, pruning shears, scythes, plows, spades, a hose, all these things, rakes, all these things, we take them for granted, but these things had to be invented by somebody, right?
Yes.
Somebody invented the wheel also, but it wasn't Noah. I don't know who it was. And Rashi says further, not only that, but Haisa Aretz Motzi Kotzim, Vidardanim, Kizroim, Hitim, Miklalaso Shel Adam Rishon. Not only that, do you know what happened? When they would plant wheat, and you know what would grow? They would get thorns and thistles. Thorns and thistles would grow when they would plant wheat. And that came to an end when Noah was born, and when Noah reached his maturity, whatever stage of Kadosh Baruch Hu deemed that the klala, that at least that part of the klala of the Rishon was now going to be rescinded. Now, so you see, you can't take it for granted that when you plant the apple tree, apples will come out. Plant an orange seed, no guarantee that oranges will come out. They used to, and that went on for centuries and generations, until Noah was born. They would plant wheat, and they would get thorns and thistles growing from the things that they planted. And
Understand the timing. Why would it be that in the midst of this very evil generation, Hashem would grant this respite?
So that's the key. The key was that they weren't so evil at that time. They weren't so evil at that time. If you notice, you want to take a look. If you have handy, sometimes you see it was there. Yes. If you notice the Haftorah that we read from last week's Parsha, if you have that in your Chumash, sometimes Chumashim have the Haftorahs there, right?
Yes.
So if you notice the Haftorah that we read last week is the pasuk in Yeshayahu, and then Perek Nun Daled. So I don't know if you have the numerations of the psukim there by you.
We have it.
12:01.
Okay.
I have
Okay.
a parakey seitze. Is that what you're talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
It starts Rani Akara, Lo Yalada.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So now, if you look toward the end of that Haftarah, it's pasuk test. It starts. The pasuk is Ki Me Noyach Zos Li. Right.
What did you say again, please?
The ninth.
Me Noach. Pasuk tet.
Right.
Oh, I see. Ki, me, Noah. Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have a translation of that also by you?
Yes.
Oh, you could read it if you like. You can just read the translation if you like.
All right. It's 9, 10. Was it what? Sorry, what was it? 10?
9.
9. For the waters.
9.
Yeah. For like the waters of Noah shall this be to me, as I have sworn never again to pass the waters of Noah over the earth, so have I sworn not to be wrathful with you or rebuke you.
So there are maforshim that they ask the question, why is the Kadosh Baruch Hu referring to the Mabel as Mei Noach?
Because it was the flood of water that happened in the time of Noah.
So,
He
Right.
was the key, he was the key player. And he was with the water related to the water. Noah and the water and the Teva are all one.
right.
They're all
So, you go ahead. So, I'm not sure, what do you mean that he and the water it was all one? How does that,
because if it wasn't for the water, if it wasn't for the Mabul, then it wouldn't be, then Noah wouldn't have played such a part in history.
right? So,
Claim to fame.
Yeah,
right, so,
yes,
so,
be associated with him.
right, so the Ebenezer explains Ki Mei Noach, that why it's called Mei Noach, as we said, because it was the Mabul was in the time of Noah. It was in time in Noah, in Noah's time, so it was called the waters of Noah. But there are others that explain a little bit differently, and they explain that that Noah is somewhat responsible for the Mabul. He was somewhat, in the eyes of, let's put it this way, in the eyes of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, he was held responsible in some ways for the Mabul, in whatever ways that the Kadosh Baruch Hu was judging him. He was judged to a certain extent because he was given the task of trying to have the generation do tshuva, right? Had the generation done tshuva, there wouldn't have been a Mabul, right?
Right?
And he was the one in the position that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose to possibly try and turn them all around. After all, like as Rashi said, he was the one, the inventor of all those wonderful things that the people were gaining so much benefit from, right? He could have been influential. He was obviously a influential person, right? He was obviously could have been very influential, right? And I have no doubt that he was very influential. So some use this pasuk as a somewhat of an accusation against Noah, that since he was instrumental in trying, and he should have tried to avert the Mabul as much as possible. So he's given somewhat responsibility because of the Mabul. As it happens to be a chazal, that anybody who can give tochacha, I mean, give chastisement and cause someone to stop from doing an avera, if he does not do that, and another person does an avera, the person who had the power to stop someone from doing avera gets that avera also. He gets credited, so to speak, with that avera also. So the responsibility to avert the Mabul was on the shoulders of Noah. So that's another way we can understand why it's called Mei Noah. A third way of understanding it is based also on that Rashi, that because of Noah, the generation, and as you were asking, Lou, why would Hashem give such benefits to such a wicked generation? So the answer was, at the time they weren't so wicked. They continued to degenerate after Noah came upon the scene. Because why? The way I understand it is that why was this klola given to Adam Arishon, that when they would plant um, uh, grain, thorns and thistles would come out, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu made it very difficult for them to make a living. People need wheat. Why? Because they want to make bread. They want to eat bread. That's the staple of life, right? So Hashem made it very difficult for people to make a living. Why did Hashem make it so difficult for people to make a living? Because it was better for them to be busy with trying to support themselves and their families, right, than to have too much free time and get themselves into trouble, right? So therefore, the klola, that the ground would not produce properly, was actually a benefit for them, because they weren't, Hashem deemed it proper that they shouldn't be on the level of getting things easily. Except now Noah came along, and Hashem, again, everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's clear. Hashem gave the wisdom to Noah to invent all these things because he wanted to give the generation a chance. He was going to now give them a chance where life would become easier for them. And by life becoming easier for them, they should hopefully take that as a lesson to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, become closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore devote themselves in their extra free time. Because now with the invention of all these wonderful agricultural inventions, technologies, they had more free time. So Hashem was, I imagine Hashem was hopeful that the generation would devote their free time to serving him rather than serving their taivas. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. The generation continued to degenerate until it reached that state of wickedness that you, Lou, were asking about, that how could Hashem give these things to such a wicked generation? So this happened afterwards. They became so wicked after these things were invented, but it really was a opportunity for them to use the free time to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in better and new ways that they couldn't have done previously. And so to a certain extent, you might attribute the mabul to Noah, because it was through his invention of all these technologies for agriculture that now gave humanity so much extra free time. Had the time been used properly, it would have been a tremendous blessing. But now, as we see in retrospect, the time was not used wisely. It was used to pursue their mundane pleasures and interests, and that led them further and further away from Kadosh Baruch Hu until they had to be destroyed. So, because of Noah's invention of these things, they had that free time, which led to their own self-destruction. So, for that reason, it could also be understood why it was called May Noah. It's called May Noah. Oh, because they weren't properly thankful. Had they realized that now Hashem was changing the Metzias, the whole Metzias has changed. They have new inventions, and they have the ability to produce food for themselves in an easier way and a more direct fashion than existed previously from the time of Adam Arishon. So therefore, had they used that, they would have been on a level higher than they had been before, and they would have been closer to Hashem. But if they used that free time for their own pleasures, to leave and go further from Hashem, so Hashem goes further and further from them until they finally, the only best thing that could have happened was them to be destroyed. So therefore, we have the lessons of all these things to learn from. So therefore, when we have a mitzvah of bringing the te'ena, to bring the first fruits, we have to realize that, first of all, it's not at all a natural thing that fruit should be produced. And when fruits are being produced, it's something which we really have to be grateful and thankful for. And if we do that, then we're getting closer to a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses that first fruit as an opportunity for a person to not simply say thank you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he uses that opportunity that a person should come to Yerushalayim. He should come to the base of Mikdash. Should come directly there to the Kohen and give this first fruit to the Kohen, and at that point, he says, and we'll continue on with the next psukim now. He makes a tremendous statement. Let's continue on with the next pasuk that we began with. We began again with the pasuk at the very beginning in pasuk Dalid. So now let's go to the pasuk Hey. That's again back to our parsha. That's in Devarim, Perek Chav Vav, 26, verse Hey, 5th verse. Vanisa.
26, Pasuk.
Hey.
Hey.
Right.
Oh,
You can go ahead, Rory, if you like.
Vanessa Amarta Lifnei Hashem Elohecha Arami Avad Avi Vayirati no Vayiredi Mitzrayma V'yogar Sham V'mesei Ma'at V'yahi Sham V'goy V'dal Atzum V'rov.
Well, so let's if you have a translation there, you could translate that.
Where is that? Can't find it's 8, no, 6, no.
5.
I've got a 5, I can't find the beginning of it. Oh, here it is. And thou shalt speak and say before the eternal thy God, a straying Syrian was my father, and he went down into Egypt and sojourned there with a few and became there a nation, great, mighty, and numerous.
Right. Now, if you recall, this is what we say as part of our Haggadah on the Pesach.
Yeah.
Right. That and we'll continue. Let's go on to the next pasuk.
Wait, before you continue, my translation is different from Roy's. Mine says an Aramean would have destroyed my father. I heard Roy read something about a Syrian.
Yeah, I said a straying Syrian was my father.
Was my father. That's a huge difference.
Mhm.
The word "was" is in italics. I think that means it's not in this text.
Right, but I have destroyed.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Which is correct?
Well, that's a good question.
Isn't Oved destroy? Aleph Bet Dalet?
Yeah. Look at Rashi. Look at the Rashi there. You have the Rashi on the pasuk K.
Mm-hmm. The Rashi, I'll read in English.
Yeah, sure.
Ra'anit is an expression for raising one's voice, speaking loud.
Right. Anisa is a Russian Aramis called it. He says this in a loud voice. He wants to make an announcement, right? He's there by the Kohen in the base of Mikdash, wants to make this announcement. He wants to say it loud and clear.
Now it's strange here. It says, Arame Avar Avi. Now it says, Assyrian destroyed my father.
Mm.
He says that
Wow.
the Rashi says that, but the translation doesn't. He mentions the loving kindness of the Omnipotent, saying, Arami Avi Avad Avi, Assyrian destroyed my father, which means Lavan wished to exterminate the whole nation. compare this to the Haggadah for Pesach, it says, when he pursued Jacob, Yaakov, but he intended to do it, the Omnipotent accounted it because he intended to do it, Hashem accounted it unto him as though he had actually done it.
Oh,
And therefore the expression avad, which refers to the past, is used.
right.
For as far as the nations of the world are concerned, the Holy One, blessed be He, accounts unto them intention as an actual deed, compared with Sifrei and Onkelos. And then he goes down to he went to Egypt. But do you want to go down into that, or?
So let's just clarify this point, right? So when it says Oyved, right? So Oyved, so Rashi explains, and that's actually based on the Onkelos as well. Oyved is that he destroyed. So in fact, we know that Lavan was not successful in destroying Yaakov, but he intended to destroy Yaakov, right? That's when he picked up and gave chase after Yaakov Avinu, and they finally met, and they, if you could call it, I guess they made a truce of some sort, and that was Lavan's attempt to Hashavua destroy Yaakov and his family, right? And so why does it say here in the pasuk that he destroyed? Because as Rashi explains very well, that since he thought to do it, right? He thought to do it. It's attributed by Kadosh Baruch Hu as if he did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you should realize that there's a difference. The Gemara, this statement of Rashi is based on a larger statement, a more elaborate statement of Chazal, that there's a comparison between the Jewish people and the non-Jews. Here, as Rashi points out, when a non-Jew will think to do something, it's going to be considered to be as if he actually did it, even though he was not successful in doing it. That is, if he's going to think to do something bad, right, it's considered to be credited to him that he did something bad in actuality. But if he thinks to do something good, he will not get credit as if he actually did something good. In contrast, the Jewish people, it's the exact opposite. When a Jew will think to do something bad, unless he actually does it, it won't be credited against him as actually have been done. But if he thinks to do a mitzvah, and for some reason he was not successful in doing the mitzvah, some reason, whatever it was, he was in Einus, he was in a situation beyond his control, he was not able to do the mitzvah, the Jew will get credit for doing the mitzvah. But if he thought to do an Aveira, and for some reason he was stopped to do the Aveira, the sin that he intended to do, he will not get credit for actually have done the Aveira, but it happens to be the exact opposite by the non-Jews.
As a matter of interest, but I'm not too sure if I should read it or not. So the notes at the back of this volume that I've got to Perek 4,
yes,
Pasuk 4, I mean, goes into the way it's sung when you're reading the Torah. Go to the trop. It goes into the trop, and how the trop affects the meaning of it.
right.
It says here that if you use the trop, and as it was explained just a few minutes ago, a few words before this, and then it says, thus connecting the two words, Assyrian attempted to destroy my father. The translation, a wandering Syrian was my father, would require a certain trop is the trop is explained here. If one intones the passage according to these two methods of punctuating it, the difference of meaning becomes obvious. Maybe I should have read the whole lot. And then it says for Posuk 5, the statement is not a continuation of the previous one. So Posuk 5 is not a continuation of Posuk 4.
Uh-huh.
For Yaakov did not go down to Egypt as a consequence of Laban's attempt to destroy him. The worshipper goes on to tell of another similar attempt, a second instance of loving kindness of God.
Right. Right. That's also important to realize that when we say, right, that Yaakov went to Mitzrayim, it wasn't as a result of what Laban wanted to do to him. Correct. Very good.
I
Right.
think, yeah.
Go ahead, Roy. What do you?
No, it's all right. No, it's all right.
So it's understood. It depends on how you're going to read the trop in terms how you're going to. There are different ways of understanding the pasuk based on how the trop is going to be vocalized. Very good. Okay, let's continue. Let's see pasuk vav.
Or maybe someone else could continue. So I read better than I can.
Mary, you'd like to read a bit?
Okay, Vav. Vayareu otanu hamitzrim, vayanunu, vayitnu aleinu avoda kasha. So it says the Egyptians mistreated us and afflicted us and placed hard work upon us.
Right. So when we got to Mitzrayim, I mean, these psukim are going off. There are hundreds of years between these events that are being discussed in these psukim, right? So now we're in the midst of the Egyptian bondage, the suffering and turmoil and trauma that the Jewish people experienced at the hands of the Mitzrayim. And so what occurred? The next pasuk reveals what occurred as a result of this.
Okay. Vanitzach el Hashem Elokei Avotenu, vayishma Hashem et kolenu, vayar et anyenu, v'et amalenu, v'et lachsenu. Okay. Then we cried out to Hashem, God of our forefathers, and Hashem heard our voice and saw our affliction, our travail, and our oppression.
Right. So now this is key, and we mentioned this in the weeks previous to Pesach, when we were learning the Haggadah a bit, that this pasuk v'nitzak el Hashem Elokai Avosenu, that we cried out to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the God of our fathers, v'yishma Hashem es kolenu, and He heard our voice, our cry, and He saw our suffering and our distress and our distress as well. And then this was the catalyst that we cried out to Hashem, meaning the whole time that we were not crying out to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? It's not that Hashem was ignoring us, but if the suffering that we were suffering at the hands of the Egyptians was not so disturbing to ourselves, right? So there was no motivation for us to cry out. And therefore the intensity of our cries, that was the catalyst for what brought forth of Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? And this is a general rule in Avodas Hashem. The Kadosh Baruch Hu is capable of doing anything. But if we are apathetic to our own situation, if we are unmoved by the experiences that we are going through, and we are not calling out to Kadosh Baruch Hu to change the situation for our benefit, for our betterment, then a Kadosh Baruch Hu will not necessarily be motivated to do anything for us. If you notice, if you have a siddur nearby, in the very beginning of Sukkot Zimra, right, we say Mizmor Shir Hanukkah Sabayis LeDavid. So there at the very beginning of when we say that Mizmor, we say, right, Mizmor Shir Hanukkah Sabayis LeDavid, Varomimcha Hashem Kididisani V'lo Samachta Al Yaveli. And now this is the key pasuk. Hashem Elokai Shivati Elecha Vitirpieni. Shivati Elecha Vitirpieni. I called out to you and you healed me. That's a parallel statement from our Parsha, that we cried out to Hashem and he heard our calls and he redeemed us from Mitzrayim. Here we're saying personally that we called out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he brought us to a situation of refuah, of good health again. And this expression Shivati is a very unique expression of prayer, right? Very unique expression of prayer. It's especially intense expression of prayer towards the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And when that intensity of prayer reaches a sufficient level, so then the Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, is now motivated to come to our aid. That's the catalyst. Now, just to get us a little bit ready for Rosh Hashanah, if you notice, if you have your matzah for Rosh Hashanah nearby, so if you notice, by just before Musaf, where you have the section there which deals with the Tekiyah Shofar.
The section to do with
Tekiyah Shofar, which is just before Musaf.
Kriyas Shofar, yeah, right, okay.
So just before the brachas, just before the blessings on the shofar, there are a series of 6 or 7 psukim. If you notice, meaning we say the Tehillim L'Metzech Livnei Korach Mizmor, we say that 7 times. The minhag is to say that 7 times. If you can, very good. If you can't, don't worry about it. It's good to say it and follow the minhag. But for some reason, the person comes in later who's distracted or something, or they're starting the Tekiyah Shofar and didn't have time to say it 7 times. So just stop and you don't have to finish it, right? At least at that time. If you want to finish it later on, could be, maybe you want to, that's very nice, but there's no necessity, apparently, of saying it. So after that, when in Tzech Livnei Korach Mizmor, we have series of 7 psukim, or 8 psukim, which precede the brachas. It begins with Mina Meitza Karasi Ka, Anani Merchev Ka. Right? So again, the same thing, Mina Meitza from the straits of my distress. Karasi Hashem, I called to Hashem that Hashem should answer me, Merchev Ka, that he was going to answer my calls. And then the next pasuk after that, if you see that, Mary, you see that in your Makser, Kol Shemata?
Yep.
You want to read that pasuk there?
Okay. Kol Shemata al Talem Oznecha L'Ravchati L'Shavati. So you have heard my voice. Do not shut your ear from my prayer for my relief when I cry out.
Very good. That's the same word, Shavati, Shavasi, right?
Right.
Holy Shemata, Al Talem Azneka. Don't close your ears. Ravachasi lishavati, to my, how does they, Ravachasi, how's that, Ravachasi, how do they translate that?
Let's see. From my, do not shut your ear. Oh, it says from my prayer, from my relief, when I cry out. So again, maybe it's relief.
Right. Yeah, Ravachasi, that's like relief. Revach is like usually a space or a breather, to have a breath.
Ah, okay. Yeah. That makes sense then.
Right. So then you have that same word as we saw in the Mizmor Shir Hanukkah Sabais David, the Shavasi. That's a especially intense cry to Kadosh Baruch Hu. So again, that's the beginning of our countdown for the Tekiah Shofar. And the Tekiah Shofar, that whole theme of the shofar is that it is a cry. It's really the sounding of the shofar is in fact a cry, and that's what we're trying to sound out. And that, more than anything, if we want to understand in a very basic way, the Meforshim explain very in great detail the power of the shofar to have a Kadosh Baruch Hu rise up from his throne of judgment and sit on his throne of mercy, Rachamim, and the secret is there in the blowing of the shofar, because what's that? That's a cry. The sounding of the shofar is really a simulation of the sound of a cry, and therefore Hashem is responding to our cries by sounding the shofar. We're basically saying, in not in words but in sound, that we're crying out to Hashem in the midst of our being judged. We're crying out to Hashem for His mercies. So again, if we're stimulated ourselves enough that we cry out to Hashem, Hashem will be responding in kind. So that's the whole Yesod basis of Rosh Hashanah, that we cry out to Hashem in the midst of our judgment, and through our crying out to Hashem, we have our prayers set and our hopes set on the fact that Hashem will judge us mercifully, and then we'll be able to, Bez Hashem, enjoy a new and productive year of health and mitzvahs and shalom and all the other brachas that we hope and pray for. So,
Rabbi, what do you actually mean by crying out to Hashem? If I'm in shul, does it mean that I raise my voice, lift my hands up to Hashem? You see some people doing something like that during a Amida when they're davening, or davening anyway. But does it mean that I have to physically call out Hashem's name and probably even in my own words say, "Help me, Hashem, I need you,"
right?
Out loud and that.
Right. So it's not necessary to do that. That's not the primary. The primary thing is that your heart should be directed to a Kadosh Baruch Hu honestly and wholeheartedly. If you honestly direct your heart intensively as much as possible to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and turn your thoughts and your hopes and your prayers to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and honestly cry within the depths of your heart, that's much more than just raising your voice, raising your arms, or standing on your tippy toes. Those things can be beneficial, right? There's a place for those things, but they're not. That's not primary. That's not primary.
I could see that if you would do that, then you'd probably go away from the siddur and into your own words and into your own way of saying things.
There's a time and place for that as well. I mean, if you can you have time to study the words of the siddur so you understand what they mean, and therefore they mean something to you. So that's very good, because sometimes if you're just saying words that you don't really know what the translation is, you don't know what the true meaning of the sentence is, so it's very difficult to relate to that in terms of just enunciating various words that you're not really tuned into and connected with. So so that's why it's beneficial to try and understand, prepare a little bit if you have time and the energy to prepare the maksha, the siddur that the words you'll be saying on Rosh Hashanah, also in Yom Kippur. But then there's also a time and place for your own private meditations. That's definitely part of what Hashem wants from us.
Okay, thank you.
Shayach, have a good Shabbos, Rabbi.
Everyone should enjoy their Shabbos, and hope to see everyone on Yom Rishon.
Amen.
Excellent.
Okay,
Thank you.
very
Everyone
much.
should be well. Shalom.
Right, you too. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.